Hi everyone, Professor Philip Travis here. It's our final week here, History 445, post-war Europe. I'm kind of forcing one of our little dogs, Mossy, to sit here. He'll probably want to get down in a bit. Mossy, of course, his name is kind of related to my own European heritage. I named him after my great uncle Mossman, who served in the British Navy, lied about his age so he could join the British Navy during the First World War. He served on a minesweeper as well as the dreadnought HMS Canada. So Mossy here, the youngest of our pack, the youngest of our little animal farm. You want to get down, Mossy? Okay, go ahead. He is actually, I've named him after my great uncle Mossman, who is another example of my own European heritage, and I've talked with you during this class about other aspects of that. My relationship with individuals that were involved in the Troubles, for example, in Ireland. So I thought I would put Mossy in here, and he's now sitting over there looking at me like, "Why did you do that to me?" But anyway, it's kind of a fun way to start our last week's announcement. I hope everyone's really enjoyed this class. We've really enjoyed having all of you in the class. We've had some really good, engaging discussions in our discussion forum this term, and so I hope the class has been enriching for everyone as well. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I've enjoyed teaching it. If you're interested in taking more history from me, I do have a couple of classes coming up in the coming term. I believe this coming term I'm offering the history of modern Russia, History 448, which will very much play well against what we've been learning in this class. And if anybody's looking for a World History Survey, I have History 111 also this coming winter term. So would love to see some of you in one of those classes if you're taking more history or you're a history major. And if not, I will have a couple other classes coming up in the spring term, one of which is actually a military history class, which I haven't offered for a while, which I'm pretty excited about. So maybe I'll see some familiar names and faces in one of my spring classes. But it's been a great term, and I've really enjoyed having each of you in this class. And let's finish it really strong here, final week of class. This week we're looking really at current day Europe, and we are reading from Jute chapter 22 and 23, and also the epilogue. And the epilogue is pretty significant. It deals with European memory, remembering events like the ramifications of World War II and the Holocaust, which is of course where we started this class. So be sure to read Jute chapter 22, 23, and the epilogue. We're going to be looking at present day Europe, and we're going to be kind of using our historical understanding to consider some current day events in Europe. There's also, I have some material, particularly a PBS News story about, I think it was about 2017, I think is when it came out, on Europe's far-right shift that, of course, has occurred in various places in Europe over the last several years. Of course, we saw Marine Le Pen in France be a fairly significant rival to, of course, Macron, the current leader of France. We saw the election of a pretty powerful far-right individual in Austria. We've seen a far-right shift in Italy, which seems to have gained momentum recently. We've seen a far-right shift in some of the Scandinavian countries. We've seen a far-right shift with a rise in the influence of a far-right party in Germany. And of course, in Great Britain, Brexit, perhaps the most the aspect of the far-right shift in Europe in the recent years that Americans are most aware of is, of course, Brexit, and of course the current Prime Minister Boris Johnson in Great Britain, in the United Kingdom. A couple other things before I get to the factoid. Of course, we have our discussion forum this week. We're back to the usual standard discussion forum as opposed to our Thanksgiving week discussion forum. So one post, two replies, 2 days of activity. Please start that no later than Thursday. And of course, replies to your professor and conversations with me, by the way, count as well towards that, just so everybody knows. I just want to see that we're having a discussion in the discussion forum. And overall, I think we've done really well in the discussion forum. So I think we've had some really valuable conversations in the discussion forum this term. Your final exam in this class, which I want to make a couple of little changes to it, so it might take me a day or two to get the final exam ready to be opened, but the final exam is due Sunday of this week by midnight. I'll try to have it open no later than Wednesday. And remember, if you struggled on the midterm exam, remember that I try to emphasize things that we discussed, pretty clearly in the discussion forum. So major themes from the discussion forum, major topics that were discussed in the discussion forum. I do emphasize some of the things on my weekly lectures and my video announcements, but overall, I try to go with things that have been pretty strongly emphasized in the class. I mean, not to say that everything's like that, and when we choose something from the reading, I do try to kind of give you a hint about the part of the chapter or the part of the book that it might be located in sometimes. Not all the times, I can't promise that every question's like that, but so when you're preparing, do remember that I do try to emphasize the major themes that we've been examining in the class. So as you prepare and study, you might go back and look over some of the discussion forums, look over some of those big ideas and themes that we've been hitting on in the class, because that'll help you prepare. I hope everybody's highlights in their book. Have your book there ready to be used, so you can look up some of the questions if you need to. But review your chapters. Look through your highlights in your reading. Just skim them so that you have a pretty good awareness. So you don't have to look everything up. You want to have plenty of time on the exam, and the exam does have a time limit. I believe the time limit for this exam is going to be 90 minutes. There is, of course, our essay on the exam as usual. I'll give you a choice on the essay. Make sure that you are concise and also thorough. You need to use a lot of specific detail on those essays to get the full points. I'm looking for you to demonstrate that you really understand this. So specifics, detail, analysis, that's what I'm really interested in. Other aspect or other component that we need to be thinking about is your final paper. Your final papers will be due Wednesday of next week. So Wednesday of exam week. So technically your exam week, your final exam during exam week technically would be your paper. We have our final in class to Sunday, but then during exam week, your major assignment is your research paper. I am going to have a research paper checklist put in modules for you so that you can go through that. Be sure to look at that. Make sure you fulfill all of those requirements before submitting, because if you fail to fulfill a requirement on the checklist, that's always, you're not meeting the basic guidelines, and you're always going to get a pretty significant point deduction for that. So please review that checklist. Okay, so that's due Wednesday, by the way, of next week, of exam week. Submit it in Canvas. Oh, also make sure you submit a Word or a PDF file type. Don't submit a .pages or something. I won't be able to open it. Make sure it's a Word or a PDF file type so I can open it. Okay, to the factoid. Real quick factoid this week. The factoid is, let's talk about Brexit real quick. So, of course, Brexit, the United Kingdom's exit from the European Union, which has been a pretty tumultuous process in the United Kingdom. I mean, we've already seen it, effectively take down two prime ministers, and of course now Boris Johnson is the prime minister who's seeking to overthrow or oversee the exit from the European Union. And Brexit is an example of the sort of I don't know if you call it a far-right shift in the case of Brexit, but Brexit's an example of the increasing move to nationalism in Europe and more of a movement towards the right in many areas of Europe. There's a lot of areas of Europe where you've seen a very far-right movement. I'm not sure if you'd call Brexit a far-right movement. It was a national referendum. But it's certainly an example of this sort of shift towards nationalism on the right end of the spectrum. And the interesting thing about it, one of the big concerns, I'm going to take you back to Ireland. One of the big concerns surrounding Brexit is that if Brexit is not worked out in the right way, and you had a immediate break, there's concerns that you would see Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland return to a hard border, so a border with checkpoints, a border where you didn't have free passage. Right now in the European Union, Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, you have free passage across the border, which was a huge development because, of course, you didn't have that when the Troubles were going on in the 1970s. As we studied, you had checkpoints because of the threat of violence and terrorism between groups like the Ulster groups in Northern Ireland and the IRA during the Troubles. Well, the European Union and the end of the Troubles has really made it possible for Ireland, the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, to have an open border, and people move freely and trade freely across the border between the Republic and Northern Ireland. Well, one of the big concerns with Brexit is if there is a break without a formal agreement worked out with the European Union, then you could see Ireland return to a hard boundary between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. And there's concerns that it could reignite some of the violence that was seen during the Troubles. So that's the factoid for this week. The factoid is Brexit, and particularly the concern that Brexit could result in a hard boundary between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, and then potentially, again, ignite animosities and potentially violence between these two areas in Ireland today, and sort of bring back some of those terrible memories of the Troubles, which we studied in this class a few weeks ago. So just give me your best summation of that as you can in an email no later than Wednesday by midnight. Get your bonus point, last bonus point added to a test score at the end of the term. Let's have a great last week of class. I can't wait to read your papers. Make sure you prepare for that exam. Let's have a great last week. I've really enjoyed having everyone this term. I hope to see everyone in another class in the future.